I was depressed. Sometimes I could sleep with an empty stomach.
If people have got nothing to lose, they've got nothing to lose. Being exposed to Harambie's model and what they were doing, it completely resonated with me. So I kind of got into impact sourcing almost by accident. And now there are all these other benefits, but up front I wasn't getting into it because I thought my retention rates were going to be better or anything else. It was just about trying to make a difference.
Harambee literally is that ready for work environment. They teach you focus, they teach you how to channel your energy, what is it that you need to do when you get into a workplace.
We went into impact sourcing for the right reasons, social responsibility, but I think we're staying as WebHelp with impact sourcing because of the benefits we've seen to our clients' customers as well as the financial benefits. So not only did I get the best customer experience I've ever had in the history of my account, but I've also received the financial gain back into our shareholders as WebHelp for bringing 500 Harambees on board.
BPESA's got a strategic partnership with Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator and with the DTI, and collectively the three parties drive the growth agenda for the sector in South Africa. What's really significant in this is the ability to influence the way in which the sector can contribute to job creation inclusively, and that government and business co-create the sectoral growth plans and the development plans that are put together by the parties.
As a business person, impact sourcing is not a choice. Impact sourcing is a necessity.
With regards to creating an enabling environment, we focus on infrastructure development, skills development, investment promotion, and creating a cost-competitive environment through incentives. The requirements of the incentive encourages companies to employ 80% youth. 20% of those should be focused on unemployed youth. So we encourage 20% of impact sourcing through the incentive program.
In the context of the South African global business services sector in South Africa, which is scaling at around 25% per annum, we've had to think of new innovative solutions to scale impact sourcing. When we conceptualized the solution with Vodacom, it was understood that this is a first in the context of our country. How does a private sector organization contract with a social enterprise and entrust a significant percentage of their customer service delivery in the name of impact sourcing? And really that's where the Simulation Academy model was born.
The benefit we've seen back into the business is an uplift in all of our key metrics. So we've seen a reduction in calls, we've seen the ability to grow our digital footprint, so it's created new opportunities of growth for us that didn't exist previously, and it spoke to what's at the core. How do we deliver the best customer experience possible? We could take those learnings, apply them back into the other business partners we have, and we've seen an overall lift in our state.
I've been on Altron Bytes People's Solution for 3 months now. This means a lot. It means a lot to me to be employed because now I'm independent. I can take care of myself. So it means a change to my future because I can study further and then I can do whatever that I want to do.
Thank you for watching the impact sourcing video that was developed for an international conference in the USA in 2019 and frames the event today. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all BPESA members, partners, and all stakeholders from across South Africa and beyond attending this BPESA Skills Forum. And BPESA is exceptionally proud and excited to be partnering with SA Youth to launch a powerful impact sourcing solution for the GBS sector. For those who I have not yet met, my name is Keith Rosmarin, and I'm the BPESA Skills Portfolio Lead. Previously, I supported Harambee for over 8 years, and the theme for today's event is close to my heart. Before taking you through the agenda and introducing the team, I'd like to share a story of a candidate I met at Harambee 3 years ago. Vuyo had been unemployed for 2 years since completing his matric successfully, and been struggling to find work after many attempts at submitting his CV. He was matched to a demand opportunity I'd facilitated for a large international captive based in Cape Town, based on his geographic location, neutral accent, and conversational English potential. Vuyo came from the Eastern Cape, but was living in a shack in the Cape Flats. Vuyo arrived every day to attend a 6-week Close the Gap work readiness intervention, building his confidence, which had taken a knock over the 2-year period, in addition to developing foundational skills for the role in the contact center. We spent time talking about what a job would mean to him and his family. And on the day of the interviews, unfortunately, Vuyo did not pitch when we reached out to him by SMS. He said he had been thrown out of his room and did not have any money to get to the interview. After exploring a few options, I decided to drive and fetch him. Vuyo eventually attended the interviews, blew the client away with his grit, determination, and evident potential, and successfully pathwayed into the role model, becoming one of the highest performing agents. He's now a team leader, and this is only one story that has been replicated many thousands of times in the GBS sector in South Africa that has set the global benchmark for impact sourcing and inclusive hiring. Today, we'll have an opportunity to learn more about SA Youth and how the platform can assist GBS businesses with an additional channel to source their talent inclusively. The storytelling team consists of a combination of colleagues and partners from BPESA and Harambee. Firstly, Lesedi Masha is the Harambee Network and Pathway Manager. Tracy Swart is the Regional Executive for Harambee with extensive GBS experience and manages the partnership interface between BPESA and Harambee. Guy Shand is the Private Sector Lead at Harambee. Andy Searle, of course, as we know, is the CEO of BPESA. And we've got back-end support from Sam and Coral, who are managing the technical aspects of this webinar. So thanks very much for that, Sam and Coral. For today's session, Tracy and Andy will be taking you through a global and domestic drivers for impact sourcing and inclusive hiring. Lesedi will tell the story of SA Youth and the National Pathway Management Network. Tracy and Guy will discuss the value proposition for GBS businesses and how to get started. And we'll close out with a call to action and next steps. Please use the chat function and the Q&A to engage with the team. Should we have time at the end, we'd love to have more engagement with questions and together with yourselves. And just as a call out, we are a proud partner of the Global Impact Sourcing Coalition. And Tracy will also talk to an African chapter that we'll be setting up based out of, and supported by BPESA. And with that introduction, I'd like to hand over to Tracy Freeman to kick off the proceedings. Thanks, Tracy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Keith, and welcome to everyone. For those who aren't in Joburg, it's clearly an auspicious moment because the rain's just really started pouring, and we know that rain in Africa is always good luck and auspicious. So it's, I think, a really, really good note to start on. What I wanted to do today is really just give a bit of a background on where impact sourcing came from or comes from. So really introducing the birth point of impact sourcing, the different players that got involved, and the journey that we've traveled since then as an industry and as BPESA with our various partners. So if we have a quick look at the timeline of the birth of impact sourcing as a formulated methodology and concept, the Rockefeller Foundation is an international philanthropic organization with a head office in the US. It's a century-old organization, and their focus is really on helping mankind. In 2008, they engaged with their Africa office, whose head office sits in Kenya, and had a look at the African continent, which has the highest youth population globally. Sadly, it also has one of the highest unemployment rates globally. So they, having engaged with the Kenyan office, really had a look at Africa to say, how is it that we can support and assist our young people on the continent? And an initiative by the name of PRIDE, or the acronym of PRIDE, which stands for Poverty Reduction Through Information and Digital Employment, was launched. And this was off the back of the fact that Rockefeller recognized that literacy of the future is digital. So they engaged with a number of partners. They had numerous auditing firms really engaging in with them, the likes of Accenture, McKinsey, etc., really sort of mapping this out, saying, how can we make a meaningful difference on the African continent and help the youth? The project really sort of iterated a few times over, and in 2013, DJA, or Digital Jobs Africa, was launched. It was actually launched in Cape Town at the World Economic Forum. A couple of our local South African entities, youth engagement organizations, were there to help with the launch. And it was at this point that the Digital Jobs Africa initiative really put forward what its intention was. There were 6 countries in Africa that the Rockefeller Foundation was engaging with to really test out the model of what is digital, how do we engage our emerging youth population, upskill them and get them into the world of work. At that point in time, it was really saying, well, what is digital? Digital could be anything from an individual working in a retail outlet on a till through to hardcore coding. So digital is quite a broad environment. When Rockefeller Foundation then started engaging more meaningfully in South Africa specifically, BPESA had been engaged from early on in the project at the Pride stage, and had really been sort of chatting to the foundation and the numerous organizations that were involved, and saw that there was an opportunity to engage youth and bring them into the global business services sector, and really make a meaningful difference to organizations that were seeing growth from a local and international perspective, and had a need for skills which they felt weren't available to them. So the Impact Sourcing Conference was the initial launch of the concept of impact sourcing, and that was launched in Joburg in 2014. And a number of partners were at the event and really started to show some of the case studies that they had been working on and developing in collaboration with one another and with the Rockefeller Foundation. 2 more years passed where a lot of testing was done, methodologies were played with, and it was at this point that I really feel a sense of pride from a South African perspective, in that of the 6 countries that were involved in really playing out the impact sourcing concept, South Africa really stood up at the front, and the organizations and entities that were involved in really testing out this concept of impact sourcing and engaging with marginalized communities saw the South African BEE scorecard actually, and tried to understand, how does this work and what is this? And the basic principle behind the scorecard is really considering a domino effect from a procurement perspective. And this was really the basis of impact sourcing, when the foundation and all the various partners that were involved had a look and saw that if we actually engaged buyers, suppliers, and individuals, that if we started pushing out the concept of intentional hiring of marginalized communities, that we could really start shifting and scaling how it is that we bring talent into the global workspace. And the reason that I mention this as global is that in 2016, the official Global Impact Sourcing Coalition was launched. The entity known as BSR, or Business for Social Responsibility, took on the secretariat of the GISC, the Global Impact Sourcing Coalition. And this being an international concept which had been tested in Africa and born and bred and launched in South Africa, looked beyond what we know to be a marginalized community in South Africa, which is obviously our youth component, and specifically unemployed youth. So impact sourcing at the core of it is really intentional hiring of marginalized communities, and that would include refugees in Europe, it would include single-headed parent households in the US, it would include females with a focus in Egypt as examples. So when we take the lens into South Africa, we're obviously talking specifically about our youth component. So we were very excited to have a number of really big global players in South Africa in 2016 when the GISC was launched. And it's really just taken leaps and bounds since then with the support of BSR and the numerous organizations that have gotten involved. So one of them that did get involved, and many players on the call today actually, and our partners, Harambee, as well as many others, have been recipients of what was launched in 2018, the Global Impact Sourcing Award, which is the IAOP in the US actually launched that in collaboration with the Rockefeller Foundation. The GISC has had a phenomenal run up through until the end of last year. They were always going to be a secretariat for a period of time. And on the previous slide, you would have seen the website address to have a look at the collateral from a BSR, a GISC perspective. But at the end of last year, they actually have gone into a pause moment and have handed the mantle of continuing the scaling of impact sourcing through to both the IOP as well as BPESA. And it was last year that we actually launched the Africa Impact Sourcing chapter, supported by BPESA, and 2 other official chapters, which have also previously been launched, is the UK Ireland chapter, which is supported by Intelligence Sourcing, and the North American chapter, which is supported by IAOP. So that is a brief journey on where we have come from and where we are now from an impact sourcing perspective. Just to show some of the founding members that were involved in the initial phases and stages of the Global Impact Sourcing Coalition in 2014, when the concept of GISC was initially founded. These are some of the founding members that got involved, and you can, I'm sure, you recognize many of these names and brands, both from a buyer's perspective to a provider's perspective to an associate or support perspective. There was a specific steer code that was set up to really iterate what the Global Impact Sourcing Coalition was going to do and how they were going to achieve that. And again, having large global brands like a Google, Facebook, Tech Mahindra on the steer code has really taken the concept of impact sourcing to heights that I don't think were previously anticipated. Fast forward a little bit, the steerco and other key individuals got involved with saying this is all good and well that we're suggesting that everybody should be practicing impact sourcing, but how can we verify that they are actually doing this? So a standard was actually developed. There is a self-verification process on that, and then it gets verified by the GISC team. A lot of this information, and we will be sharing links, is available on if you are going to be practice impact sourcing, what does it mean, and how can you ensure that you're ticking all the right boxes to make sure that the actions and activities and processes and procedures that you put in place all align and adhere to what is considered best practice. So the brands that you see on the screen now were the early adopters of the GISC standard. Just some more logos for you to see where from a conceptual phase right in the beginning to where the GISC ended at the end of last year. These are what they referenced as standard members, and they had different tiers of members that could get involved. So these were paid for members that actually put their hands up to say, we definitely endorse and support and have adopted impact sourcing, and we want to be part of the GISC. So these are the standard members. And then associate members. So some of these brands you'll recognize like BPESA and Harambee, who were the initial founding members of the GISC. But you would have recognized many brands that are familiar, again, to sort of the global business world, as well as to the global business services space specifically. If we go a little bit deeper and have a look at what is the business case for impact sourcing, and this is kind of where the rubber hits the road. We have numerous organizations, and we've just shown you many of those brands that are at different stages of adoption of impact sourcing. Impact sourcing, although it has a CSI or CSR aspect to it, one of the big messages that the GISC and many of the players or adopters of impact sourcing have really tried to put out there is that it's not only CSR. It really has a social aspect to it, as well as a business benefit aspect to it. So again, from a South African perspective, we recognize the impact sourcing to be practiced in supporting marginalized communities, which are predominantly youth. And this is where we know from a global business services perspective, and again, specifically in South Africa, and then numerous other growth GBS sector countries in Africa are looking at how do they get this phenomenal youth talent pool into the world of work. So it's really about engaging with those youth communities, and that's what the rest of the webinar today is going to highlight, how we can do that and how we've really sort of turned that on its head. But in order for organizations to actually adopt impact sourcing and to realize the business benefits that have been suggested, a lot of research was done, and the actual providers, the BPOs, the captives that chose to adopt impact sourcing have seen that it gives them an access to new sources of talent. There's much higher levels of employee engagement, and tests that were done and case studies that were shared is that there's really just an attitudinal enthusiasm that comes through. The individuals had previously been locked out of the economy. An organization has given them an opportunity to be employed, and there's a massive loyalty that comes through to that organization and an enthusiasm to actually do the job that they're doing. And that feeds us into reported lower attrition and attrition levels and absenteeism levels. The attrition levels are down in excess of 60%. And immediately you can see that that would be a direct commercial business case saving. So as soon as you have your reduced attrition levels, you're no longer having to go out and re-recruit and retrain, which are tangible savings for the organization. The absenteeism rates are way down, and we've seen that productivity is up, and literally bringing in what we reference as a standard recruit and an impact worker or an impact sourcing recruit, we've seen that within 3 months that the individuals are delivering on a par, if not seeing the impact worker actually delivering at a slightly higher level than the standard recruit. Punctuality is improved, and of course, if you have an individual that's been in your organization a little bit longer, there's an enthusiasm that they bring with themselves, we're seeing much higher levels of customer experience. And many of our local BPOs in South Africa who have chosen to adopt impact sourcing have really attested to this, so much so that some of the clients have said, we only want you to hire in impact workers into our campaigns or our projects. And then, of course, again, from a local perspective, there is an opportunity to improve the BEE scorecard, but this also ties in nicely, and I think Andy's going to cover a little bit more on how this benefits those that are applying for the DTI incentives. Then if you look at how this impacts lives, communities, and countries, again, when we're speaking to an international community, the daily reality of unemployment is not always as evident to them as what it is to South Africans, you and I, that live here, and we understand that this is our #1 priority in the country, is how do we shift the unemployment rate? How do we open up opportunities specifically for our youth who have landed up losing hope, really? And the global business services sector has opened up a door of opportunity to bring hope through to these individuals, but more than hope, there's opportunities for lucrative employment opportunities and careers. And as soon as you bring an individual into the world of work, they start earning a salary. We literally have the most phenomenal case studies of how that individual's life has been transformed, how it has transformed their families, and thereby transforming the community that they live in. We've seen additional spending going into education, both for themselves to uplift themselves, as well as for their siblings and their families. So the knock-on effect of practicing impact sourcing supports not only the individuals, but us as citizens who live side by side with the unemployment rate that we have in the country. So massive shifting that can happen from a community's perspective. I've already mentioned the domino effect, and I've alluded to many of these points. So really how impact sourcing works from a global perspective is having a look at big buyers of outsourced services and offshored services that have said, this is no longer a nice to have. And there's been a number of impact sourcing webinars that we've hosted recently. You may have seen some of these where we've had the Googles of the world, the Facebooks, the Intuits actually sitting there saying, this is no longer a nice to have. This is the way that business operates. And we want to make sure that we're seeing all of the service providers practicing impact sourcing as our partners. The suppliers themselves also practice impact sourcing by ensuring that all of their service providers, be it your facilities management, cleaning, transport, are also practicing impact sourcing and bringing marginalized youth into their world of work. And then I've already spoken to how this impacts the community and the individual. A little bit more on the value of impact sourcing. It's really about supply chain inclusion. So it's really not only benefiting the individual that's unemployed, but really bringing small and medium enterprises into the supply chain and really shifting the economy from that perspective, making sure that we have more players in the supply chain that are servicing this, the GBS sector. I think at that point, I'm going to pause because I know we're going to drill into a little bit more detail. But just to say that BPESA is exceptionally proud to be the custodian of the Africa Impact Sourcing Chapter, working with lots of other global organizations. And we have a steering committee that's been set up and really are reaching out to our global business services sector at large, saying, get hold of us, get involved. It's really a co-creation that we want to do with the global business services sector from a South African perspective, African perspective, and global perspective. Thank you very much, Keith. I'll pass back on to you there.
Thanks very much, Tracy. I think that really positions, I think, some of the global drivers and the ROI drivers for South Africa. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Andy. Thanks very much, Andy.
Great, thanks, Keith, and good afternoon and welcome to everybody. As you can see, the sector's enjoyed tremendous growth over the past number of years, particularly the last few years. And although we took a knock in COVID, there's a real momentum building to get back onto a trajectory that we had prior to lockdown, which could see us, if all things go right, add 70,000 new jobs to the sector by the end of 2023 and a very ambitious 470,000 odd jobs by the end of 2030. Now, this job creating capability, combined with the real export revenue that it generates for the economy, is really raising the profile of the sector amongst government and amongst business groupings to that of a priority sector, to the extent that it enjoys priority status in the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. It's been called out by the President in numerous addresses to the nation, and we've recently given approval by the DTRC, our partners, to develop a sector master plan. This opportunity is really substantial, and growth needs to be inclusive. The success of the proposition has really been, which is evidenced by this great growth, really bears testament, though, to the quality of the young people who drive that performance. And they make up 91% of the new hires, mostly deployed in voice-based roles, but not only. But they all come from poorer and marginalized communities where millions of others live and are unemployed. So this growth potential represents that unique opportunity to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs for these talented youth. And accessing many more of these young people, unlocking their potential, will not only give them great job opportunity, but will enable the companies that do so to scale their operations behind this growing global demand and contribute into the economic recovery and reconstruction process. Our BPESA, together with its partners and the DTRC and Harambee, are committed, as I hope you've heard in the presentation by Tracy, to champion and support the drive to hire inclusively into the sector for good reason. The DTRC has endorsed and supported this practice, and they've included that in one of the requirements in the GBS incentive guidelines. That's a really significant demonstration of advocacy and support. BPESA will continue the work of the Global Impact Sourcing Coalition, and Tracy's talked about our role in leading the African chapter, which we really are excited about. And so if you aren't already members of the coalition, we encourage you to join. BPESA will also advocate the National Pathway Manager Network, and I'm going to leave that to our colleagues from Harambee to talk more about today, being the main purpose of today's discussion. But that will be for adoption amongst all our industries and specifically our GBS employers. And BPESA is also taking on the role of an intermediary to implement outcomes-funded skills programs, and we'll use that role to enable companies to meet their inclusive hiring targets wherever they're struggling to do so with their own capabilities. Now, each organization then has a role to play. And as an operator, there's much that you can do to drive the adoption of impact sourcing and inclusive growth. Firstly, you can broaden and scale the scope of inclusive hiring in your own business. Secondly, You can help us and our partners in the DTRC and Harambee to build better insights into how this practice is being adopted, how effectively it's being deployed. And you can do that through sharing information about your strategy, about your own targets, about what you're learning and any obstacles you encounter, and any suggestions that you have to improve this. You can also share case studies, which we've talked about. There are many around, and there was a chat question asking about business cases and examples of ROI, for which there are a growing number made available for you. And you can assist us in advocating this practice within your own business network, amongst your colleagues, amongst your clients, amongst your suppliers, as an integral component of the sector's overall growth strategy. We are here to support you. So together with our partners, we can assist you as follows. We can refer you to companies that have the capabilities and the footprint to be able to support you in sourcing the right candidates from marginalized and excluded communities. We can assist you to build the capabilities in-house with practice guidelines, with coaching, with support, with references to organizations that have built these capabilities. We can include you in funded skills programs where we play the role of intermediary, and where excluded youth are the target audience for participation. We can assist you to build your candidate pipeline through participating in the SAYOUTH platform and the National Pathway Manager Network. And we can assist you by advocating to the growing number of domestic and international clients to really include socially conscious and inclusive hiring as part of the outsourcing and offshore strategy. And lastly, we can promote jointly the commercial benefits that Tracy was talking about earlier of hiring inclusively. So in closing, we should really reflect on this unique opportunity and responsibility that we have to use the growth potential of the GBS sector to make a positive impact on youth unemployment in the country. And the best thing about this is that the very young people who would benefit from your adoption of inclusive hiring as a practice will provide you with the competitive advantage needed to grow your business and to win new business in the global markets. Please continue to support our collective drive to hire inclusively, or join us now in doing so if you haven't yet started. Thank you, and I'd like to hand back to you, Keith.
Thank you, Andy. I think also, what you've heard a lot of information around impact sourcing, inclusive hiring. We have got an impact sourcing supplement that was launched in 2019, and we'll redistribute that to the delegates. But it's also important to note that we're reviewing them, and we'll be updating this supplement in 2021 to showcase the many examples that we do have in this country that provide a true global benchmark for impact sourcing. But you're here also today to hear more about SAYouth and the National Pathway Management Network. And with that, Lesedi, I'd like very much to hand over to you to take us through that journey. Thank you, Lesedi.
Thank you, Keith. Welcome, everyone, and I hope you have been enjoying the session so far. It's always best to start explaining the National Pathway Management Network through first putting ourselves in the shoes of a young person in South Africa. Today's story is HERSHEL'S, which also speaks to the story of many unemployed youth, and particularly young unemployed women. So HERSHEL is a 22-year-old young woman from El Dorado Park. She lives in a household of 7 people whose only stable income is their grandmother's grant. HERSHEL is the mom of the house, but she's unemployed. She looks for work every week or whenever she can afford to. Unemployed youth spend almost 1,000 Rand a month to look for work, half of that on transport and a third on data. But she's never successful. She has no work experience, no qualifications beyond matric, and no networks to recommend her for a job. Basically, HERSHEL is invisible. She's excluded from the economy, and the economy is invisible to her. But HERSHEL's story is that of millions of young people in South Africa. At the start of 2020, we had only 5.8 million youth employed, a number that hasn't increased since our last crisis in 2009. In lockdown, Another 1 million lost their jobs, and 2/3 were young women. So what this really is a systems change. That is what's required to remove barriers for young people so that they can access opportunities. Often, young people are the first out the door in a crisis, but are at the back of the queue in a recovery. We need to change the system from the status quo to a couple of improvements that we're seeing now to a national pathway manager, where we're removing systematic barriers for young people. Where did this all start? And this is where I bring us back to the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which is a comprehensive youth employment intervention underpinned by 5 pillars. The 5 pillars are: 1, the National Pathway Management Network, which is a single platform where young people can access opportunities freely and inclusively and be linked to services near them to close their gaps. Pillar 2, Workforce Solutions for Job Growth. This pillar is about creating new jobs in fast-growing sectors and preparing youth through short and flexible skilling interventions. Pillar 3 speaks to the Inclusive Economy Challenge Fund, where we enable self-employed youth in townships and rural areas to scale up their micro enterprises. This includes gig work. Pillar 4, workplace-based experience, includes demand-side programs, and YES is a lead partner here. And Pillar 5, which speaks is about creating opportunities for youth to earn an income while contributing to nation building. So if we look at Pillar 1, which is the National Pathway Management Network, this is the overarching pillar over the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. It has 3 aims. 1, to create more jobs and opportunities for youth in the formal, informal, and social economy. Secondly, to drive system change that addresses barriers and supports inclusive hiring and reduced unemployment. And thirdly, to link youth to opportunities and to support them inclusively and for free. In a nutshell, we first look at the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which is a strategic national vision and plan which sets out priority actions to address youth unemployment. The National Pathway Manager, which is a pillar in the intervention, partners services and opportunities for youth organizing together around the young people into a network of networks. And therefore, what SAYouth is, this is the platform of the National Pathway Management Network for all young people to access learning and earning opportunities. The SAYouth platform is where young South African work seekers can come and access the network to find jobs, to earn an income, to stay engaged, and to get connected. If you'd like to think of it, it's the network of networks which provide young people with ongoing recommendations for learning and content, as well as connecting them to services near them. This inclusive platform has a free Mobi-site as the entry point for youth. However, I'll also take you through the channels that are available online and offline. It's also important to note that the National Pathway Manager, which is SAYouth, is co-created by several partners who are involved in the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. The likes of the Department of Employment and Labor, the Department of Higher Education and Training, Science and Innovation, the Jobs Fund, the National Treasury, the Gauteng Premier Office, as well as NYDA, Harambee, and a lot of university partners. As I mentioned, the Mobi-site is an entry point for youth. However, there are multiple additional channels that have been established for SAYouth. The first being, or the other two being, inbound and outbound line. Both of these are toll-free and free for a young person to access any sort of help that they need. From anything from needing to update your profile, wanting to report a scam, wanting to report an opportunity you find out about, wanting to register for opportunities. And an example here would be for the DBE project, which was Department of Basic Education. Last year when they were recruiting 300,000 teachers assistants and general assistants, there was an option to call into the toll-free line to apply for this opportunity. If, for example, connectivity in your area was not great, or you were struggling with the Mobi-site. We also have social media platforms where young people can engage with SA Youth. Anything from queries, getting connected to different opportunities. Another channel is the WhatsApp chatbot. And right now, what a young person can do on the WhatsApp chatbot is engage with various activities and challenges to either start a hustle or grow their hustle. What we've also done on the chatbot is to use language that young people are familiar with. Young people have many times expressed that when they are starting to earn income doing little jobs here and there, they call it a hustle. So the WhatsApp chatbot makes sure that we use the language of young people in this country. We also have a partner portal, as well as sites that are engaging with their networks as they come into their offices to get them registered on SA Youth. What we really wanted to do in today's session is take you through what is available today if you were to go onto sayouth.datafree.co. The first thing I want to point out is, yes, it is a Mobi-site. And the reasons for creating it as a Mobi-site is apps tend to have data and storage heaviness. Young people are using devices, from smart devices, feature phones, internet-enabled phones. So we needed a platform that a lot of them can access regardless of the type of phone they have, regardless of the memory that they have. So SA Youth is a Mobi-site for that reason. We're also building single sign-on capabilities on SA Youth so that as we engage and integrate with other platforms, a young person would feel that it's a seamless experience as they move from one Mobi-site to an app or to another partner website and not feel like they have to re-enter their information every time. So the first thing that would happen when you go onto SA Youth is the join process. You'll notice that the process is simple and quick. We even highlight that it would take approximately 4 minutes to complete the registration process. And you only need two things, your ID number and your zip code. And if you don't know your zip code, at least where you live. Once you've signed on, you'll notice that it's a personalized experience. Everything from recommendations, understanding where you live, understanding your qualifications, understanding your interests has been loaded into the Mobi-site. Secondly, the next thing a young person would do is build their profile. So there's two aspects to it. You build your profile in less than 5 minutes, key things we want to know about you, and you can always come back to the platform to update your profile. So as you're building your profile, there's 4 key areas that through many years of research, we've discovered that if we know these 4 key areas, we can easily start recommending the right types of opportunities to young people. 1, we want to understand your current situation. Are you looking for work? Are you looking to grow your business? Are you looking just for inspiration? Secondly, your community involvement. Are you currently involved in a community organization? As well as your volunteering involvement. Are you currently volunteering, and what are you volunteering in? Thirdly, describe your regular day, which has options, very quick tick options, everything from during the day I take care of my siblings or I take care of other children. During the day, I spend my time looking for work. During the day, I spend my time being busy with sports or I stay active. So understanding what the regular day for a young person gives you a perspective of their voluntary agency, but also some of their barriers. And particularly for young women, we've noticed that childcare is ticked often because they're often given the responsibilities in the household to look after their siblings or their own children. Lastly, we will ask for sentiments. And this is where we're trying to understand which young people or unemployed young people are interested in community type work, stipended type work, and part-time work. Once you've completed building your profile, we have enough information to start recommending opportunities to you. Everything from learning, earning, or hustle opportunities. And as you come back and engage with the profile, adding your contact information, changing your address, your education background, the recommendation engine starts recommending things based on what you tell it. Lastly, what is, I think, the biggest key to this forum is the third thing that you'll find on the platform, which are the opportunities. And this is where we have various partners, employers, government organizations involved in sharing opportunities with young people. These organizations are aggregated, can be private sector, entrepreneurship, and community-based. And what we've included are examples of how these reflect right now on the Mobi-site. You'll notice that they are simple, they are to the point, and they are sharp. So as much as this environment is data-free, at no cost to a young person, how the information is portrayed to the young person has to be in a simple way where they can digest it. They get to see a summary view, and here I've put down 4 examples of a private sector job where I'm looking to be a sales consultant. I can quickly see the company name, quickly see where it is, and a short description. And on any of these cards, if you click read more, it gives you more information, everything from the salary and the benefits to the closing date to the description, as well as the requirements or the criteria. What we aim to do with SA Youth is have young people start and complete an application process environment. So there are instances when they click apply where it redirects them to a government website or to a recruitment site or to a different job site. But we are trying to build more and more into the National Pathway Manager so a young person can stay in a data-free environment and connect themselves to opportunities. Thank you, and I'd like to pass on to my colleague Tracy.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we've heard from Tracy and Andy and Lesedi on the what and the why in terms of impact sourcing. And Guy and I are going to get into more specifics around what SA Youth can do for your business. Harambee identified the GBS sector 3 years ago as a priority sector in terms of job creation. And I think the slides that Andy showed earlier show the compounded annual growth in employment. What we do know is that to continue that level of growth, significant employment of excluded youth has to take place to allow us to develop the skill pools that will be needed to create that growth. First and foremost, to mention is that this service that is being offered as part of the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention is free of charge to both employers and obviously to the young work seekers. The idea of linking young people to opportunities that are geographically close to them and match their potential will allow for this service to be successful. SA Youth will allow your organization to create the opportunity cards that Lesedi referred to, showcasing the opportunity within your organization and showing that opportunity based on an algorithm in the background that will ensure a sort of a close geographic match, making sure that transport doesn't become an intensive cost for those young people, and also looking at other potential that they have, including whether they're interested in that sector or not, and would then be interested in applying for your opportunity. The candidates who qualify for the DTI incentive as inclusive hires are identified and validated on the platform. We know that there's a number of you participating today that are recipients of the incentive from the DTIC, and that the ongoing requirement to source excluded youth can often be problematic, and we really would like to urge you to use this platform to assist with that. The costs for using the platform, as I say, are zero, and therefore reduce your traditional sourcing costs, naturally increasing your efficiency as another channel that you can use, knowing that the young people are supported through this application process and that you have an ability to manage and control that process through the partner portal, which Guy is going to go through in a bit of detail. As you've heard, there are compelling arguments, both commercially and socially, for undertaking impact sourcing, and we really urge you, as all the operators in the sector, to work together to increase the level of excluded youth hiring. I'm going to hand over to Guy Shand, who's going to go over a little bit more detail about where we are currently, just bearing in mind that SA Youth is a constantly iterating platform, and we are adding benefits to, benefits and other services to it on a regular basis. So not everything that we've spoken about today is live immediately, particularly from a partner portal perspective, but we have got processes in place that will allow for you to use the platform until that partner portal is live. Over to you, Guy.
Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening to everyone, depending on where you are. So I saw a question in the chat earlier that related to how do we actually match an individual or understand their fit to the specific environment that we're talking about. So Lesedi showed us earlier the information that our work seekers provide to them. We also have a contact center that reaches out to work seekers to identify six key elements of information to help understand and recommend them for that specific opportunity. So the first we've mentioned is the geographic match, which Tracy spoke to earlier. What we've learned from a lot of research is where a young individual or young person is within one taxi ride of a potential opportunity, the ability to afford to stay in that opportunity increases significantly, which by default then will increase their potential retention. We also want to understand what their functional needs are required for the specific opportunity. And I know in this sector, spoken English is something that is key. So understanding a work seeker's spoken English is key to matching them to an opportunity. Basic behaviors and socialization for work. So in some instances, youth have not had formal work experience. So understanding other indicators like energy, curiosity, and regulation helps us understand this key element. Then in terms of specific opportunities, there are also other additional requirements which you might want to consider. So these could be socio-demographic, so anything related to age, gender, ethnicity, or education level, potentially experience. We also look at occupation-specific requirements. So these would be the competencies that are required for the opportunity. And this could be something such as a post-matric qualification. And then Lesedi also mentioned interest. So interest in an opportunity is also key. So where an opportunity is put in front of a work seeker on the Mobi-site, there's the option for them to opt in. We see where a candidate opts in for an opportunity and they have high interest, they're also more likely to be successful in that opportunity. So Tracy also spoke to the fact that this platform is iterating and continuing to improve. And currently, in terms of availability, what we have available from a product point of view is the geocoding of addresses. We've spoken to this matching engine that matches the work seekers to the opportunities. We also have a learner management system. So this provides information for our work seekers to help improve everything from searching for a job, interview guides and tips, how to create a CV. We also have content related to driver's license preparation or second chance matric. We know that COVID is obviously something that is very current around the world, so providing additional relevant information to our work seekers for free on the Mobi-site. And then we recently launched a toll-free inbound line for our work seekers where work seekers can contact us free of charge to update any information related to their profile or to ask any other questions that they might have. From a future capability point of view, what is probably most interesting for this group is WhatsApp integration, where work seekers will be able to capture a voice note, which you then as an employer can review. And this will also have the capability of where you can create a customized script for a work seeker to be able to read. We've also spoken about the partner portal. So this is the opportunity to place this whole platform or system online, where you as employers will have an opportunity to utilize this directly. So therefore will be an employer self-service product, and that would still remain free of charge. And then we're still doing further development of work seeker support content to provide further learning and upskilling opportunities for our work seekers. So currently, what is the process should you have any potential opportunities which you would like to source work seekers for? The first step is to just email services@harambee.co.za. We will share this deck with you afterwards to provide the information that's highlighted in the slide. One of our client service agents will then contact you to better understand the specific requirements of the job, everything related to location, salary, potential skills that are required. There is a simple 2-page SLA, which just outlines the benefits of the product, as well as highlights the fact that there is no specific fee. And this is a one-off process. So once you've signed it, you continue to work with us utilizing that same SLA. We will then match the young work seekers to your requirements. We share an interview register with you of the work seekers who have opted into that interview, and then you are then able to interview them. This whole process takes anywhere from 1 to 5 days in terms of us receiving the notification of the type of job opportunity and the specific detail related to it, through to when the interview register is shared with you. And just to reiterate from something that Tracy mentioned earlier, whilst there is no fee for this service specifically, what we do require or request is that you provide us with information in terms of which candidates actually have been hired. The reason for this is our model is funded by a range of different funders, and we require the data as proof of the fact that the concept works and the fact that where we actually are hiring work seekers, we're also able to use that information to gain further insights into various different sectors or understand elements relating to the match itself. So it is a free service, but we do ask that you provide us with information related to who has or has not been placed. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Guy. I know that everybody's received a huge bunch of sort of quality information over this session. There have been a number of comments and questions in the chat as well. We've got 1 or 2 minutes just to engage with some of those questions and queries, and I'll ask the team to help assist with that. Perhaps just kicking off with the skilling of candidates and closing the gap. Perhaps, Andy, we could just summarize that and our role that we play as an intermediary to upskill candidates for the sector.
Okay, thanks for that. So there are different interventions to close the gap. Those that are most effective for the excluded youth, by definition, we've used do involve funded programs and with contributions from business. And those programs take people through a specific bridging work readiness program to get them ready in key areas of work readiness to enter the job market, where they take on board the clients or the operators' induction and training programs. Our BPESA will be and is already supporting those programs as an intermediary, bringing the training providers equipped to deliver that together to match their supply to the demand of the operators who want to participate in that. So that's specifically around closing the gap.
Thanks very much, Andy. Are there any others that you'd like to address in the last minute before I wrap up proceedings? I
did see one question, Keith. I think it was from Fiona, just about funding and the question of double dipping. I think importantly to note that as far as the platform goes and the Pathway Manager network goes, you need not be concerned about leveraging it to its full benefits and that being double dipping. When it comes to closing the gap interventions that are funded by third parties, particularly if it's government funding, then in each of those instances that would be assessed to make sure with the partners that there isn't double dipping. So that will be taken care of on a case-by-case basis, but there haven't been issues with that have been avoidable in the past, that have not been avoidable in the past.
Great stuff. Thanks, Andy. I think we are running out of time now. It's been fantastic to have everybody participating, but just in brief, we have got a second session planned for the 11th at 1 p.m. for those individuals that might be in your organizations or in your network that would like to attend. We are also conducting regional roadshows into each region to especially help address some of the operational ways in which you can engage with the network and SA Youth. And of course, we'll have follow-up workshops to talk about these very interesting and pressing issues that our country faces currently. So just want to say thank you very much for everybody attending. We would truly value your feedback, engagement. We will send an email through capturing the video of the proceedings, as well as an overview of SA Youth. and looking forward to engaging with everybody. Thank you very much indeed, and thanks for participating and investing the time for this session. Thank you.